Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and here we're looking at legends summarized by overly sarcastic productions. This is the Legend of Gilgamesh. Now, I know about this myth from FGO, so I'm probably well informed about this. I think I've reached the final stage of FGO fandom where you kind of accept that it's actually a very good source of historical knowledge if taken without including the gender of the characters. Yeah, it feels weird to say this, but I am. I think I've reached the terminal stage. Well, more importantly, you guys know the deal. There's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. Let's get started.
It's a common belief among storytellers that storytelling is the most important facet of humanity, which is a very understandable bias for us to have.
English major, I completely agree. Completely biased, and I think anyone else is wrong.
And while branding it the absolute pinnacle of human nature might be a bit indulgent, there's something dizzyingly awe-inspiring about the endless chain of tales and legends that links us through 100,000 years of forgotten names and vanished lives. Our roots run deep and dark through the forgotten places.
Okay, I actually know I've seen this picture before, this form of cave painting she's seen, or she's putting on the screen right now, and it's killing me because I cannot remember where I've seen it before. I know the other one is from a site in France, specifically, I think it's this one. And I'm not sure if this is the same part of that site, but I just... I like historical monuments like this. Or not even monuments, like discoveries. So this is literally just like, oh, I love this stuff. I know I've seen this stuff. I cannot remember it. It's bugging me so much. If someone knows in the comments, I appreciate if you tell me, because this is going to bug me for a while.
Of history. Stories so old we don't even realize how old they are. Some of those stories are stellar. In many places around the world, the Pleiades star cluster is referred to as the Seven Sisters, which is noteworthy because only 6 stars are visible, and in the myths, one of the 7 sisters is typically missing, dead or abducted or hiding in shame, leaving the other 6 behind. What's interesting is that there actually are 7 stars in the Pleiades, but 2 of them have drifted so close together that they cannot be distinguished with the naked eye.
Oh. So that would imply
7 sisters and that
people
their
had the
number
stories
has been
for long enough to remember
Well,
that.
there was a time when there were 7 visible stars in the Pleiades, 100,000 years ago.
This is why I'm going to completely agree with everything Red said about stories being the most important part. Because information like this, showing that the only way this kind of knowledge would be known, the only reason that kind of story would start at all would be if there was oral storytelling, a tradition of information being passed down for 100,000 years. And considering the time frame, yeah, I mean, if you add 25 to either direction, I don't know. Probably the other direction, going further in the past more than closer in the past. But that is so insane. For example, 10,000 BC is a good time to say, yeah, that's roughly when some people start getting writing, and it was rough, but we had it. And then you look at this going 100,000 BC. What the fuck, man?
So maybe the story knows that they went from 7 to 6 because the story is 100,000 years old. Some of these stories describe a world that no longer exists. Australian Aboriginal mythology and folklore often warns of giant, dangerous creatures that align very, very closely with the megafauna that used to roam its plains, like the Diprotodon, megafauna that's been extinct for 40,000 years. Rock art in the region depicts
I mean, we knew people were alive during this period, at least during the last ice age. They weren't quite people as we would know them now because, well, we don't know anything about them, but maybe we do know a few things because we have these cave paintings. This is so... Sorry, I was expecting a lot out of the Epic Gilgamesh. I thought we'd just jump right in. I didn't know we were getting to indulge my geekiest passion ever, history, because... Oh, man, I am geeking out so hard today, and this is completely worth it.
Marsupial lions that have been extinct for a brisk 30,000 years. Dude. It's very cool to catch glimpses of the truly staggering longevity of storytelling, but unfortunately these cases are the exception and not the rule. While the lineage of many myths and legends can be theoretically traced back...
Centauri, volcano history... Nikos... Oh, this is the island that some people think might have inspired... What was it? The ideas of Atlantis? Because it would be something in common parlance that Socrates could then use as his basic of the story. He's like, oh yeah, there was an explosion. I remember that.
Thousands of years to key events in the archaeological record that may have shaped them. It's the nature of stories to change with every telling, which is why searching for crisp historicity in ancient legends is a recipe for madness. The evolution of stories is very similar to biological evolution. It's often the odd little consistencies across a seemingly unrelated menagerie that let us...
Wait. Red Riding Hood?
Biological evolution. It's often the
Takes the example of Runaway Date, relationship between Little Red Riding Hood and the similar tales from the region of the world. East Asia, sisters, home alone, knock on the door, is a leopard or a predator, just Granny, why are your legs so big? And from another, I've talked so much and geeked out so much about the idea of cultural cross-pollination, and then there's an actual dissertation right here about the idea of Little Red Riding Hood, the most traditional, at least as far as I know, Western story that you could think of, and how it has roots in multiple other continents that have similar storylines. And it could be the same. It could be that someone heard one and went to the other. It could also be that they were the same story and taken to other places. I don't know, but the fact that there is probably a bond because of the similarities. It could be a coincidence, but also once is a coincidence. Multiple continents, seeing both Central, Southern Africa, they're all close enough to where there would be cross-pollination because we knew people moved there, because we have trade routes with relics left behind from those time periods. I mentioned I'm geeking out already, right? Good. I didn't want to surprise anyone. Yeah, if this is your first time watching this, anything from my channel, I'm a geek. I know, I hide it well.
little consistencies across a seemingly unrelated menagerie that let us identify and trace back a lineage. And
wait, the Wolf King? Oh, we have Aesop's fables with variations of it, and that's the Wolf King over there, and then we have the African versions over there. Oh, there's an Indian offshoot as well. Oh my god, I need to find this paper.
Just like in biology, in the grand scheme of storytelling, almost everything is lost.
Oh, and we have the Grimm version over here. East Asian ones, I don't know what that stands for. The cat? Probably something Middle Eastern, I'm just not aware of. It'll be obvious in hindsight. Wait, Grimm is over here. Huh.
We might want to find or reconstruct the original version of these ancient tales, searching for those truly ancient stories, but the original is gone, shattered into the branches of a family tree with the vast majority of its defining narrative lost forever, only scraps and hints and fragments cluing us into what shape the common narrative ancestor might have.
Although the one exception I would say here is when you actually have the original story still floating around, but because there's so many variations on it, you think it's a variation without realizing that it is as close to the original as you can get, because it just happened to be preserved, but you forget which is the original by comparison to everything else. That is honestly one of the least likely outcomes, but it's also not impossible. And frankly, I love it when you find out, oh yeah, this kind of thing is just floating around. It's actually the correct way to do it. A good way to do this that isn't narrative-based is actually the word ask. Ask is not the traditional way to say it. But in Southern America, there is a way to say that is ask you a question. Ask that. I'm going to ask you this. That is a colloquialism. But it is traditionally the way to say it in the previous time period, I think in the Victorian era. So that is actually a older form of English that has preserved in a specific location. And people think that's just a regional dialect. But no, it's actually the older, more original, more correct way to say it based on the time period where it was initially imported into a culture. So it is the original with it later, well, original to that period specifically, transported somewhere else and kept the same. If it can happen with a single word, it's not impossible for it to happen with stories. I know I've heard of instances where that happens, but I'm pulling a massive blank on the moment, and I kind of don't want to stop to break the narrative flow any more than I already am, just to geek out.
Once taken. The great tragedy of this kind of research is that sometimes things are just gone. Paleolithic cave paintings are eroded away by wind and water. The key
and more frequently, Neolithic cave paintings are eroded away by people touching them. And as disturbing as it sounds, licking them. Because people do that. That's why that specific cave in France, whose name I can never seem to remember, actually had to close off the original except a scientist, because people would do that shit.
Historical details in a legend are lost when the teller doesn't think them interesting enough to pass along to the next generation. A civilization's records are miraculously preserved, but the language they're written in dies out, and so the knowledge dies with them. Geological upheaval buries a city under 100 meters of rock, and within 200 years, nobody remembers its name. Storytelling may not be the most important thing humanity is responsible for, but it is alive, and like all alive things, it dies very easily. This is why it is truly, genuinely incredible that we have the Epic of Gilgamesh.
I would disagree about it dying easily. It's... with how she's describing dying, I get why she's saying that. She's describing dying as the initial concept, this specific instance of it, exists only as long as it's remembered. And when the memory stops, it's gone. But what she's also described is that cross-pollination, the spread of ideas, the morphing and the changing and the evolution of ideas into different ones until they're completely unique. That's why I'm disagreeing. An idea doesn't die. Thoughts and stories don't die. They change and they become unrecognizable from what they were. But I still think the initial concept is still there floating somewhere, if only in an abstract form. I don't believe in ideas dying. It's a very much personal take on this. I get where she's coming from. I understand that argument. I completely acknowledge that argument. She's going on the very specific interpretation where I'm taking a much more broad one. But it is actually a very important distinction to understand when it comes to literary analysis. Is the idea dead or do ideas live? It might sound stupid, and admittedly, it really is, because it's a bunch of people who have way too much free time, spending way too much time geeking out over something they are hyper passionate about. But that's also the entire reason I'm doing this, so I'm going to indulge in that.
Before 1853, the Epic of Gilgamesh was a pile of broken pottery in an Assyrian ruin. Before 1872, it was a pile of broken pottery in the basement of the British Museum. It wasn't until Assyriologist George Smith translated the cuneiform in the Flood Tablet, which would later be known as Part 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, that it became clear that there was a story here, a coherent written narrative older than anything anyone had found before. It was only a fragment, but it told an epic tale of a cataclysmic flood very similar to the one in the Tanakh, and they still had a lot of broken pottery to go. There is no single complete version of the Epic of...
I'm wondering how much of this flood does line up with the flooding of Daggerland over time. Doggerland? The connecting land between the UK, Europe proper, and the Finland, Denmark areas, which apparently, I learned from previous videos from OSP, was actually inhabited because now that they've dredged it up, you find relics that are now on the beach when there's a slight lower tide, because when they tried to dig it up so it'd be deeper, and when certain shorelines were shored up, I think more in the Finnish countries, or well, Norse countries. Would they mean Norse countries? I'm not actually from Europe. I'm not sure what the common parlance for that location is. Northern European countries? Well, whatever. You find pieces and relics from the much deeper sections of the North Sea, and that's kind of fascinating.
Of Gilgamesh. The oldest stories about him we have access to are Sumerian from the 18th century BCE, where his exploits were literally used as writing homework for scribes, which is why we have about 5 million copies of them. In these poems, Gilgamesh is called Bilgamesh, and while a few details from the overall epic show up, like Enkidu being Gilgamesh's best friend and Gilgamesh overall being a totally badass king, it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the epic, and it's clear that there was basically a corpus of episodic folklore about Gilgamesh popular in the cultural consciousness long before his story was consolidated.
So wait. Oh God. I just realized what the analogy is. If the writing assignment for homework to basically become a scribe, to show that you could do it, was to write the Epic of Gilgamesh, it was so obvious everyone would know it. So it's kind of like Quetzalcoatl, where it was so obvious people just knew it. Unlike that, though, because it was homework, we have written examples. Unlike Quetzalcoatl in the South American side and Central and Eastern, or just most of America, the Americas, I guess, is plural, was just so well known, no one bothered, unless they did write it down in their specific writing style that we may or may not understand, because we may or may not be discovering it still. Some of the writing styles are interesting. But that would imply they were essentially doing the equivalent of the opening to The Simpsons, where Bart is writing the board, "I will not," to get a lesson in. Huh. Sorry, it's just one of those things where the concept that something so incredibly pop culture-y as The Simpsons has an overlapping aspect with the Epic of Gilgamesh is kind of... For anyone else who'd be like, whoa, what the hell, mind-blowing? For me, it's literally, oh my God, that sounds freaking cool. But again, I am a geek. That is a very unusual reaction. Ooh, I hit my mic. Oops. But yeah, just the idea of rote memorization by writing something down to get an idea across. It works.
Into the epic. There was also clearly a prototypical version of the epic.
Okay, apparently that's just a technical issue. Yeah, that's good, because I thought I broke my mics. Considering these are headphones or not something I want to replace, that would actually scare me. I actually had a mini panic attack for a second there. Oh God. Oh wow.
Somewhere between the 13th and 11th century BCE, when he wrote down what is now considered to be the standard version of the Epic of Gilgamesh, or as it was called at the time, He Who Saw the Deep. Now, 3,000 years of wear and tear on the tablets.
How much of this did they recover from other sources plotting it in, and how much did they just guess at? Oh, actually, I could probably see the actual example right there. These sections are what they're just guessing at.
Left the story somewhat fragmented, but because this tale was so popular in various forms, new tablets with chunks of the Epic of Gilgamesh are being discovered all the time.
Dude.
Every new translation is more complete than the previous ones because it has more to work from.
At this point, I kind of want to find one of the latest, most up-to-date translations and the very first one to see just what is different between the two. That would take a long time, but also that's so freaking awesome.
This is the rare, beautiful case where a lost story was rediscovered, and instead of being half a fragment of a scrap of an oblique reference with absolutely no hope of recovery, it was literally an entire saga. We've known about this epic, the oldest known work of literature, for less than 200 years. A combination of luck and skill.
Wait, we're calling it the oldest known. And I think I've always taken it as the oldest story because it's the oldest story. But no, if they were using it as a proof that people could write, then it probably wasn't the oldest. It was the most famous and then oldest in that order. Because there were probably other stories as well, because you wouldn't train someone on the most up-to-date, most current story. You would train them on the thing that everyone knows, so it's easy to spot a mistake. Oh, sorry, just the implications are fascinating.
And some very, very...
Also, the British Museum rolling up to take everything Assyrian artifact that wasn't nailed down, but like, okay, see, colonization and looting is awful, but this one is a weird, complicated case because the excavated ruins were devastated by terrorist attacks in the 2000s. Oh, yeah, I heard about those. But also, the invading U.S. forces also looted these sites, and the British Museum only returned the recently stolen stuff in 2018. And yeah, not to mention, I'm pretty sure a lot of these areas were then looted by any other group that wanted anything now that they know they're valuable, and probably had been looted before, but they didn't realize these were valuable as well. So new things are valuable to loot.
Have given us back something we could have very easily lost forever. And part of what makes the Epic of Gilgamesh so interesting is that its own narrative theme is applied to it on a metatextual level. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a legend that was dead and forgotten for 2,000 years, is a story about death, legacy, and immortality. So let's talk about it. The story begins with a glowing attestation.
I just got what she meant by the meta-narrative. It's literally a story of immortality, and then the story died. And then achieved immortality by being brought back to life.
Of the beautiful and magnificent city of Uruk, and an equally glowing description of Gilgamesh, a great hero king.
Hold your applause. In my head, I literally hear Archer's voice. Specifically Gilgamesh Archer. Yeah, the FGO in me is coming out.
Unbelievably huge, powerful, and strong, most likely in large part because he is 1/3 man, 2/3 god. However, despite being a great king, Gilgamesh is kind of a terrible.
Good tax policy and an impressive monster-killing resume. 2 stars off since he bounced me like a basketball for half an hour in the courtyard of Nana's temple and banged my wife. A 3-star review. Oh my god.
Person harassing the young men of his city in some unspecified way and harassing the young women in a very specified way. The gist is that when a young woman gets married, she spends her wedding night with Gilgamesh first and her actual husband second. This is...
She's probably about to bring this up, but that's something Gilgamesh is not alone on. That is actually something that was codified into a lot of monarchies as the right of kings. They called it different things, but you can take exactly the correct meaning from what I just said. Yeah. Hello, Ninsun. I'd like to file a complaint. Yeah, it's called the Royal Game of I'll tell you the rules later.
It's not a great arrangement for anyone but Gilgamesh, and the women of Uruk are just about sick of it, so they petition the gods for help. The gods roll up and deliberate what to do about Gilgamesh being a huge turbo tire.
For the last time, we are not doing another mass extinction. So what's your plan, smart guy? Okay, hear me out. We make a bigger guy. Yeah.
And eventually they decide the only logical solution is to create Gilgamesh's equal, someone who can stand up to him and make him chill out. The goddess Aruru, creator of humanity, shapes some clay into a massive and powerful wild man called Enkidu, an absolute and literal beast who spends his days in the wilderness with the animals, causing problems for the local hunters, which means the number of unstoppably powerful demigods causing problems for innocent locals has changed from 1 to 2. Yeah. Good work, team. The hunters try and figure out what to do about this huge monster man.
Bit off topic here, but considering Red's earlier tangent about the cross-pollination of ideas, which is how I refer to it, but her idea of how ideas spread, and considering that he was the king of the city that everyone knew and that ideas did pollinate through multiple different sections, I'm wondering if we've seen the Greek interpretation of Gilgamesh and it turned into Zeus, because I'm literally just comparing the rampant sexual assault of everyone, because that is very much Zeus's defining trait. I wouldn't even be surprised if that was one of the things that just carried over. Or if it is just more ubiquitous that, hey, there's a guy in charge and he's an asshole and he does this shit. You know, for my own peace of mind, I'm going to believe it's the Zeus one, because the probably accurate idea that people in charge did horrible, stupid things and writing characters who would do horrible, stupid things is just too sensical, and I hate every second about this. Let's move on before I think about it too much.
It keeps wrecking their traps and freeing their prey, and they settle on the creative solution of calling in an expert on getting men to behave, the legendary prostitute Shamhat, whose reputation turns out to be well-earned because after engaging Enkidu for an entire week, the man has somehow learned language, showering, social skills, table manners, and how to immediately go at it for another week. In between...
God damn! Also, how bad... Oh god, he never showered prior. She earned her reputation. How dare he ruin the wholesome fun of consensual boning? I have nothing more to teach you. Oh my god. And truly, this is a solution multiple cultures have come up with, because that is legitimately the story of Amaterasu in the cave. That is one of the solutions that worked. Not quite the same, but also very close to the same.
Completing her Tarzan speedrun any percent, Shamhat tells Enkidu about the legendary king Gilgamesh, and he catches wind of Gilgamesh's abuses of power and immediately resolves to go and fight him 1v1. Enkidu and Shamhat head to Uruk, and the people marvel at this strange wild man, animalistic in nature but just as strong and powerful as Gilgamesh himself. As Gilgamesh makes his way to the newest newlywed...
Not one step further! Oh, you're going to challenge me? The god's specialist boy. Wait. Oh, you're challenge... Red? Did you literally just do a JoJo? You literally just did the JoJo. Oh my. Well played. Well played indeed.
In town, Enkidu blocks his path and challenges him to single combat. They fight, and while the details of their clash are obscured by damage to the tablet, when the signal fuzzes back in, Gilgamesh and Enkidu stop fighting, kiss, decide to be best friends for life, and then Gilgamesh introduces Enkidu to his mom.
Wait, what? Oh, look at my guy wife. He's just as lovely as your prophetic dreams indicated. Prophetic dreams? Oh my god.
Actually setting the first world record for the enemies to lovers trope, which has yet to be surpassed. A couple lines later...
Oh, that was explicitly the lovers. Oh. I don't know enough about the culture back then to know if kissing was considered the same as it is now or different.
Gilgamesh decides on a whim that he wants to go and kill a big monster, a terrifying fire-breathing creature by the name of Humbaba. And when Enkidu asks why the hell they would do that, Gilgamesh calls him a wuss and goes to do it anyway.
Did he just say, why? What? The fire-breathing, unsleeping, divinely appointed guardian of the sacred forest? I guess I'll be excited. I'll be excited for the both of us. Oh yeah, because killing the guardian.
To do it anyway. Absolutely nobody can dissuade Gilgamesh from this idea, so the two of them gear up and head to the forest of cedar that Humbaba guards. On the way, Gilgamesh has a series of scary symbolic nightmares.
He has a bunch of symbolic nightmares, and he ignores them. Hey, what do you think the mountain represents? How huge this bad idea was! Knowing you, definitely not. Oh my god. Oh, he's talking about the therapy session. That's what Red's doing. That's what the music in the background is showing. It's the therapy room.
But every time he gets freaked out, Enkidu manages to explain why the scary symbolic nightmare is actually a good thing. And I'd love to give you more details about what the dreams were and how they could possibly be good. But, sorry, tablet busted, who dis? All that matters is the boys...
So for all we know, he's taking a completely different tact on what that dream interpretation means. But we don't know because it's literally missing. But also, it might not be missing forever because we might find someone else's homework someday. That is such a weird concept, and I love every second of it. Also, there's probably someone in the Babylonian equivalent of 3rd grade going, wow, I hate this. My hand hurts. Are we done yet? I realize it's prescribed, so it's probably older, but the story's funnier in my head this way.
make it to the Forest of Cedar, catch Humbaba's trail, and square up with him. Humbaba talks a little smack, Gilgamesh gets nervous.
So you will suffer my wrath. Bro, was this a bad idea? I guess I'll be excited for the both of us.
Enkidu affectionately calls him a wuss, and they fight. And with the help of a little bit of divine intervention, courtesy of Gilgamesh's goddess mom, Humbaba is pinned down by the wind so Gilgamesh can slay him. Enkidu briefly worries that killing a monster created by the gods might upset the gods.
Nah, I'm sure nothing like that has ever happened before. Although there's actually an entirely good chance that based on the lores, this might have been the first idea, at least in their location, that was the first time the gods did that. Well, it's a trope now. I wonder if this was the trope setter. It's entirely possible it's not as well. That should be kind of fascinating. I just think we might be pushing a little bit. But his head will look great on the ziggurat.
A little bit. I'm sure that won't come back later. Or immediately,
nope.
When the boys make it back to Uruk with a ton of high-quality cereal.
My lord, it's a miracle. You're something we must grovel later. Shower first. Back to the shower.
Wooden toe, Gilgamesh gets himself cleaned up after his long and arduous journey and is immediately ambushed by the goddess Ishtar, who thinks he's really hot and wants to marry him.
Get in line, sister. You would be perfect for me. Oh my god. It's actually really funny seeing this after going through Red's Aphrodite video and showing that she's one of the progenitors for that entire myth. Just showing how things have moved around.
Gilgamesh enumerates a large number of reasons.
I'm sorry, she literally has a sus arrow right to the heart. Oh my god. There was that Tammuz guy, the bird, the lion, that thing with the horse, the dude you turn into a wolf. Frankly, the animal thing is getting very suspicious. Now I am wondering if it's a cross-pollination of ideas for Zeus, because Zeus sexually assaulting everyone and all the animal stuff, even though it's not him, but it's now associated with his myth in a way that would be transposed in a completely wrong method. I wonder if it would be.
He's not going to do that in the form of a list of all of Ishtar's exes that have suffered various horrible fates, and Ishtar gets really upset and storms back to the heavens.
Wait, Papa, please help me kill him. I don't know, dear. Sounds a bit dire.
In a rage, she asks her parents, Anu and Antu, if she can borrow the Bull of Heaven and have it kill Gilgamesh, and makes it clear that her alternative plan is to smash down the gates of the underworld and raise up the dead so they devour the living.
Wow. God damn, Ishtar. So it's literally, I send a bull to kill one person and maybe the city, or everything dies. They're going back to the extinction really fast here. Which is weird, because I didn't think the dead, I didn't think Ereshkigal liked Ishtar in canon mythology. That's cool. I can just do plan. I'm assuming that's plan B in cuneiform. Objection withdrawn.
Rather than dealing with the paperwork of an ancient Mesopotamian zombie apocalypse, Anu gives her the Bull of Heaven and she unleashes it on an unsuspecting Uruk. It's an absolute nightmare of a monster, with its very presence boiling the rivers and cracking the earth. But Enkidu and Gilgamesh manage to defeat it through the cunning strategy of hitting it really hard.
Okay, I'm not even... Yeah, there's the JoJo reference right there. But also, can we acknowledge, while it's probably not a Team 4-Star reference, I'm immediately going there in my head. What's the strategy? Hit it harder! That's where my mind goes, and I'm not going to apologize for that, because I'm standing by it.
Hard. They sacrifice various parts of the bull to various different gods, throw a party, and go to sleep. Job well done, boys. Unfortunately, Enkidu dreams that a council of the gods convenes to discuss how Enkidu and Gilgamesh can be punished for killing not one, but two sacred creatures crafted.
They got it out on the second one. The first one, though, that's completely on them. I'm just saying, they'll die on their own anyway. It's the principle.
By the gods. The gods agree that one of them should die for it, and unfortunately for Enkidu, the reluctant consensus, even among the gods that like them, is that Gilgamesh is a lot less disposable than Enkidu.
Ah, so he knows about that. That sucks. And Gilgamesh is saying, talk not to me of blasphemy, man. I know that's a reference to something, but I cannot tell what it is.
He wakes up heartbroken, knowing that his death is inevitable, and coming soon to a civilization near you. While Gilgamesh tries to petition the gods,
she lured me with bread and boobs and stuff. I mean, yeah, that works.
To spare him, Enkidu privately breaks down and laments to Shamash the sun god, cursing the hunter and Shamhat that took him away from his peaceful, ignorant, wild existence and doomed him to a life weakened by civilization and knowledge, forcing him to forever be lesser than his great friend. Shamash gently chastises him for cursing the people that gave him his life and his friendship with Gilgamesh. And
oh, wow, that's... Sorry, I'm not used to a lot of mythologies giving advice that, yeah, you feel lesser, but you're not. Just because that is not usually the case. When you hear someone lamenting that they die horribly, it's a tragic figure against the horrible ills of whatever is going on. And also, good advice is not usually in these mythologies, unless it's specifically the African ones, which are always kind of amazing. Yeah, the few that Red has covered have always looked really actually good as far as giving life lessons, because none of the other ones do. It's always, don't fuck with the people who could literally kill you with a thought. Which, admittedly, good advice, but not helpful. But did you like the bread? Yes. And the boobs? Oh, for sure. Then it sounds like she helped you make a life worth living, huh? And thanks. As thanks, please make her even hotter.
Enkidu calms down a little, so to make up for cursing Shamhat, he turns around and blesses her to be incredibly home-wreckingly hot and have a lot of great boning for the rest of her life.
Damn.
Despite his little moment of closure, Enkidu's not resting peacefully quite yet. He has a second dream where a terrifying lion birdman attacks him and drags him into the sunless underworld where he...
Damn. I am trying to face this with dignity. Yeah, I don't think they want the dignity.
He's paraded before a menagerie of death gods. When he wakes up, he's sick,
Oh
and his
boy,
illness
it's
worsens
happening.
over the next 12 days. On his deathbed, Enkidu tells Gilgamesh that he feared dying in battle, but he now wishes he'd at least had the fame and glory of a violent death. A slow, lingering illness brings him nothing at all.
Huh. So literally just wasting away. Considering how much of the story was about fighting horribly, or against horrible odds, that would make a lot more sense. I'm wondering how much the idea that this was the most tragic fate he could have was interpreted throughout the ages, because it does feel like a lot of the thoughts towards death are die gloriously in battle, because if you live to old age and waste away, it's so much worse. I wonder if this was the trendsetter for what came later, or if it just happened to be something that come up with multiple locations. It could be both, because dude bros who like to fight kind of have similar mentalities no matter what the culture is. I mean, admittedly, I'm applying to that currently as well, so yeah. I know, right? Who's going to remember a death this lame? Yep, no one. No one's going to remember that. They'll probably remember all your victories, though.
Enkidu dies, and Gilgamesh is heartbroken. He commissions a massive statue of Enkidu, drains his treasury to commission sacrifices for the gods so that they'll favor Enkidu, and ultimately spirals into a full-blown existential crisis. In this state, Gilgamesh leaves Uruk and sets out for the farthest reaches of the world in search of a legendary man named Utnapishtim, who along with his wife are the only people who have ever become immortal.
And that's one of the things I've heard some mentions, that this about becoming immortality was initially referenced to a lot of other characters who existed in other mythologies, including some interpretations of Methuselah within the Christian mythologies. That said, I personally think that's a stretch. But for all we know, it was so common we pulled ideas from that, which, at least on the Christian side, was very common, considering things like Halloween were just picked up from other people, or Christmas happening in December. Just stealing. I was going to say sanguinalia, but that's literally 40K. Wow. My 40K is infecting my normal information source. But it's basically stealing other holidays. So it's entirely likely, actually.
Gilgamesh makes his way through the wilderness, still quite powerful, but now also quite frightened thanks to his rolling existential crisis. So he's still defeating lions with his bare hands, but now he's sad about it. He reaches the Twin Mountains where the sun rises, guarded...
Well, he's smiling. Why is he smiling? Now, one of us always tells the truth, and frankly, he's clearly not in the mood.
By two scorpion men who let him pass when he tells them he's seeking Utnapishtim. He travels through the dark...
They actually just let him? Well, that's actually kind of surprising. You'd think immortals would have no reason to hide like this.
Sunless void for 12 double hours before he finally...
12 double hours? Oh, were they talking about a day with a specific way to describe it?
Emerges into a strange garden of stone and crystal trees at the edge of a vast ocean. An old goddess directs him to the boatman that can take him to...
Wait, goddesses can get old? That's actually a really unique way to describe it. Now, if it's Red's take on it, or specifically how they present it, maybe. But normally when you say old, it progresses with, okay, they've aged. And I know there's a lot of mythologies where the gods aren't specifically immortal. They're just long-lived plus. I'm mostly thinking of the Egyptian ones, where they did die and get replaced and have new variations and then come back to life as part of the entire cycle. So age would be a thing. Ra being a big specific example that I know about because of OSP videos. I wonder if the Babylonian gods went through a similar process of actually still having that. Excuse me, I'm looking for immortality. Yes. Second grove on the left. Tip the boatman when he... Wait, when you get there?
Utnapishtim, a man named Urshanabi, currently working in a forest with a large group of strange stone men. But Gilgamesh interprets her directions as instructions to fight Urshanabi and the stone men, which makes the process of getting to Utnapishtim extra complicated, because...
Of course he took it as a threat. Oh, wait, you're the bowman. Are you 2/3 god, 1/3 idiot? Yeah, more than a third.
The stone men Gilgamesh smashes to bits are the people who are supposed to be manning the dang boat. Urshanabi and Gilgamesh end up having to man it themselves, including a rather perilous section where they need to pull the boat through a band of deadly water and improvise a sail out of their own clothes. But Gilgamesh finally lands unscathed on the...
He's literally there, just butt cheek up. Greetings, immortal one. The mighty Gilgamesh graces you with his presence. Put your cheeks away. Get off my beach.
far shore and meets Utnapishtim, who is very unimpressed with him. Gilgamesh asks Utnapishtim how he acquired immortality, and Utnapishtim tells him the tale. A long, long time ago, Utnapishtim lived in the great city of Shudapak, where one night the god Ea came to him in a dream and told him to...
Fish head. I'm assuming it's a deity of the ocean or the fish, something like that. Okay, don't freak out, but I need you to freak out. What?
Forsake his house, abandon his wealth, and build an enormous boat, filling it with everything needed for life to survive. Ea does not elaborate why this is necessary, but helpfully provides him with a cover story for...
And that's why... Okay, so maybe it does directly relate to the idea that this was... I was going to say Moses. No. Noah. Huh. Why? Let's say, hypothetically, I'm not going to read that. Enel is really mad and you'll be crashing at my place for a bit. Hypothetically, of course.
For this apparent madness. If anybody asks, Utnapishtim has somehow incurred the wrath of the god Enlil, a notoriously volatile god of wind and storms, and so Utnapishtim has to go live in Ea's oceanic realm. Ea also says that he can tell the others that soon Shudapak will experience a rain of plenty, a shower of bread cakes, and a
Bread cakes? But the city is going to be drowning in success, practically swimming in it, hypothetically.
Torrent of wheat. Ea's suspicious caginess and oddly meteorological metaphors clearly alarm Utnapishtim because he obeys without question, emptying his treasury and sacrificing his livestock to ensure his workmen are very richly compensated for building...
Yeah, it definitely needs more bathrooms. Oh, yeah. If you've ever been in a place where bathrooms are in limited supply, you know that this is not a joke. Anyone who thinks there's enough, they are wrong. Always, every time, regardless.
Building the massive ark as quickly and as well as possible. Utnapishtim loads up the boat with his family, some work...
But darling, we live in a palace! What an inefficient use of space, right? Who needs all that acreage?
Workmen and artisans, and a whole bunch of animals. On the day Ea warned him of, he seals the hatch, and the rain begins to fall. A deluge unlike any other drowns the city and drives the gods up into Anu's realm, most of them grieving the destruction and the death of humanity. After 7 days, the rain finally stops, and Utnapishtim cracks the hatch to survey the terrain. The outlook is not good. There's ocean as far as the eye can see, and only the highest mountain peaks are visible as tiny, barren islands. He grounds the ship on one of them and starts sending out birds to look for livable land, and after...
Yeah, that's basically Noah. Oh man, there's so many flood myths. And considering she did mention stories going back 100,000 years mentioning the 7 sisters who we see as 6, because the only time they would be different would have been 100,000 plus years ago. I wonder if they are actually referencing the melting of the glaciers flooding so much of the landmass.
After 2 failures, he releases a raven that flies far enough to see the waters receding. Utnapishtim makes a sacrifice to the...
And there's the mention of a raven, showing that maybe there's a connection to the Norse. Granted, that one is completely speculative and probably completely unrelated because, one, there's just not enough primary source information about Norse mythology and the Norse mythology. I keep saying North. Norse mythology at all. And 2, because it's literally just a mention of a bird.
The gods, and being basically the only human alive and currently praying, all the gods turn up, including Enlil, who the other gods are none...
You've got a lot of nerve. At least I kept my word, mister. I definitely won't tell anyone about your awesome murder plan. Yeah.
I'm too pleased with, because it turns out Enlil is the one who came up with this dumb flood plan himself to try and fix overpopulation, and somehow convince the other gods to be sworn to secrecy about it. Enlil is furious that Utnapishtim survived, but Ea calls...
And we didn't even get all of them. That's a good thing. Then why am I angry? I ask that every day.
A dingus for orchestrating this whole unnecessarily dramatic debacle, and Enlil calms down. He takes Utnapishtim and his wife and declares that they are now immortal like the gods, and decrees that they'll live far away from the rest of the world at the source of all rivers. So Utnapishtim...
Oh. So the guy who killed everyone's like, oh, you like living? Take more of it. But also then cursing them to be away from everyone.
Him and his wife are whisked away to this beautiful and alien land, and that brings them to today. Since Gilgamesh doesn't have the option of surviving a cataclysmic flood and convening every god in the world to talk
But I can't use that at all. Wow, that's so weird. It's almost like immortality doesn't just happen.
About it, he's not entirely sure what he's supposed to take from this, so Utnapishtim tells him if he wants to conquer death, he's going to have to start by conquering...
If you think you can conquer death, try testing your might against sleep. Ha, trivial. Oh, you poor bastard.
Sleep. He challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 7 nights, which Gilgamesh declares to be child's play before immediately passing out. When he's eventually nudged awake, he insists it was only a brief doze, only to see that Utnapishtim's wife has helpfully baked him a fresh loaf of bread for every day he was asleep. There are 7 of them in total, 5 of which have become completely inedible. This is very disheartening for Gilgamesh, and while Utnapishtim won't give him a do-over, he does take pity on the poor
Sorry about the doomed ambition. The least I could do is be a good host. I mean, they fed him sort of every day.
guy and cheers him up with a nice hot bath and a makeover to get all the depression gone.
Yeah, that would do
He
it.
also kicks out his boatman, presumably so nobody else winds up on his front lawn with delusions of grandeur.
Please know, I love sailing through murder water twice a week. You're also fired.
As Gilgamesh and the boatman go to leave, Utnapishtim gives Gilgamesh one more option to stave...
Wait, I have heard tell of a rare plant that... OMG, dibs! I hate everything about what I just said. Oh, why did I read that out loud? Oh.
off the Reaper, a rare plant found under the ocean that restores the youth to anyone who eats it. Gilgamesh immediately dives in and finds it and plans to bring it back to Uruk and test it on some random old guy before downing it himself, but then he leaves it unattended and a snake eats it. Womp womp.
Yep.
Gilgamesh's pursuit of immortality officially completely
rough,
pointless,
buddy.
and with no way back to Utnapishtim or the plant,
I recognize that opera in the background. Oh my god. Isn't this the clown who's singing his sorrows? I could be mistaken, though.
and he despondently returns to Uruk, and the story ends the way it began, with a description of the wonder and majesty of this great city, far greater than the life of any one man. There is something in...
Did the thing just say the man's a snack? Oh yeah. No, I would have gone mad with grief too. The man's a snack. He really was. The man-wife thing.
There is something incredibly poignant about reading this story almost 5,000 years after its historical setting. If the historical Gilgamesh who ruled Uruk sometime between 2900 and 2350 BCE truly suffered the memento mori crisis that his fictional counterpart did, then it's a strange form of immortality he's found himself in. One, like Utnapishtim, granted by no action of his own, but by the choices of a group he had no power over. The people of Uruk told his stories for 1,000 years after his death before they were codified in the tablets we have now, a distant, abstracted immortality very far away from the world of the living. Gilgamesh could not have an immortal life, but when he gazes on Uruk and sings its praises in the final lines of the tablet, he hints at the immortality he will inadvertently achieve. He was terrified of...
And I wonder if that was the knowledge of what was going to happen. To achieve immortality, he made sure he was remembered. And that's why people were trained on it. And admittedly, that was actually incredibly accurate because it made sure that even when it was forgotten, it could be rediscovered, which is what happened. If that's actually intentional as a way to say, hey, my last order, make sure everyone keeps using my story in the most boring way possible so everyone has it everywhere. It's a dumb order, but it worked if that was the case. I wonder if that would be intentional or not, though. I have no idea.
Of death, but when he stopped running from it and returned to the city he lived to protect and rule, he became a king worth immortalizing, worth telling stories about for 2,000 years, stories then worth recovering and translating 2,000 years after that. Immortality is memory and legacy and history. It isn't outrunning death, it's outlasting it. Storytelling may not be the most important thing humanity's ever done, but it is how we share the gift of immortality.
Also, the idea that being alive through the stories you leave behind isn't something synonymous with that specific culture or just the Epic of Gilgamesh. That was also a very Greek way of saying your name is how you survive. That's why you do great deeds, so people remember you in story. This concept of story being immortality is very much a thing that translated through a lot of human history. Some cultures more than others. The Greek is what I'm going to immediately because it's the one that comes to mind first. But I'm sure there's others because that is an easy way to say, I'm dead, but also, you still know me.
With the people and stories that we love, and in a very real way, it's an honor to carry that on. But while we're talking retellings, look, I couldn't give less of a shit about the Fate franchise, but it drives me up the fucking wall that this is their design for Gilgamesh.
Yep.
This gold-plated broomstick, 2/3 god with a 6-cubit stride. You're telling me it's not this beefy muscle man?
I mean, one of them is a very big fan favorite. And admittedly, yeah, based on that, he probably would have been the better choice.
You're telling me that is supposed to be Alexander the Great, who did all of his best work before he was 25? It's a rare treat for the Fate franchise to have designs that even come close to making sense.
I mean, they're at least wearing clothes similar. Yeah. Sir Francis Drake, El Draka, English Explorer, Privateer, G-Cup.
But these designs would actually kind of work if you just switched them.
Oh, shit. You know, now that she points it out, it actually does work. Like, really well. Damn.
And instead they did this, and I hate it. I hate it so much. I can't believe they do this to me.
And that was freaking amazing. I was expecting a lot of Fate references, and frankly, coming at the end, nice as you point out, and disturbing how when you really transpose Gilgamesh, and I'm sorry, I'm actually a little speechless right now, because when she flipped the images around, Alexander and Gilgamesh really do look like the other is supposed to look in actual history. Still not exactly accurate because it's thousands of years later, but the fact that they're closer is actually freaky. Although I had no idea what Alexander was supposed to look like, because oddly enough, even though I'm massively a fan of all those bits of history, I don't think I've ever bothered to look at what the pictures even look like or the sculptures. Or if I did, I completely ignore them, which is also completely likely as well. But all of that information just makes me think this is so freaking cool. And I would love if someone tried to find out what stories related to Gilgamesh from what came later, because I threw out a bunch about saying, okay, it kind of looks like Zeus early on. And it would make a lot more sense if in Red's video covering Bacchus, or, well, I keep calling him Bacchus, that's the Roman version. Well, I forgot the Greek version off the top of my head. I'll remember later. But the wine god, and how he was prophesied to be the person who will replace Zeus. I'm wondering if that is actually a carryover from an even earlier time period prior to all of that, where it was maybe imported from this culture, and this is the predecessor versus whoever would have become the successor. I don't know, but this entire video is kind of convincing me maybe that random thing that could be the case but couldn't be isn't entirely wrong. And it could also be that they're unrelated, but someone transposed ideas between them. I would love to see how these ideas culturally propagate out, because we can see the starting point, which is a lot more than you could see for the Red Riding Hood stories that were brought up. At what point do we say, okay, we see all these stories and what they all have in common and what is missing from the original? We can kind of fill in the blanks based on that. Or just keep finding tablets, which is also a thing that is happening. I read the credits where they said in 2015 they found more, specifically about Enkidu having sex for 2 weeks. That specifically was new information. Before it was 1 week. Oh, jeez. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you haven't already, there's a link below to the original video. I love Red's take on history, how she's bringing in so much more about that to cover the mythologies, and it's reminding me I also really need to get to Blue stuff about history in general, because there's so much of it, and I'm going to geek out so hard. It is going to be so massively, throbbingly hard. I'm freaking excited, man. I realize what I just said. Yeah, fuck it. I incriminate myself enough as it is. All the same, you guys know the deal. Link below, video, hit it up. I'll see you in the next one. Adios.